Imagine drilling so deep into the Earth that the planet itself begins to prove your scientific theories wrong. Not one theory, almost all of them. For 24 years, Soviet scientists pushed a drill farther into the Earth's crust than anyone had ever imagined possible. They weren't searching for gold. They weren't searching for oil. They were searching for answers. Instead, they uncovered mysteries that geologists still struggle to explain today. The deeper they drilled, the stranger everything became. Temperatures skyrocketed beyond every prediction. Water appeared where no water should exist. Ancient life emerged from rocks nearly 2 billion years old. And one of the most important geological boundaries on Earth simply wasn't there. So why, after spending decades and millions of dollars, did they suddenly abandon the project? And why does the deepest hole ever drilled remain sealed beneath a rusting metal cap to this day? Because the real story isn't what they were looking for, it's what they never expected to find. To understand why this project changed science forever, you first need to understand just how deep they actually went. The Kola Superdeep Borehole is only about 9 inches wide, roughly the width of a dinner plate. Yet it descends an astonishing 12,262 meters, making it the deepest artificial point humanity has ever reached beneath Earth's surface. If you stood Mount Everest inside it, the summit still wouldn't reach the top. And even today, more than 3 decades later, no one has drilled deeper. Not because we don't want to, because we can't. That's where this story becomes truly fascinating. Despite our satellites orbiting distant planets, despite telescopes peering billions of light years into space, humanity has barely scratched the surface of its own world. The year was 1970. The world remembers the Cold War as a race into space, but another race was taking place. Straight down. American scientists had launched Project Mahole, hoping to drill through Earth's crust and reach the mantle off the coast of Mexico. The project failed. The Soviets believed they could succeed, and they meant it. They selected one of the oldest pieces of continental crust on Earth, the remote Kola Peninsula, just inside the Arctic Circle, a frozen wilderness where winter temperatures plunged below -40 degrees. It wasn't chosen because it was convenient. It was chosen because the rocks beneath it had preserved over 2.5 billion years of Earth's history. If our planet had a diary, they believed it was buried here. The drilling rig was called the Uralmash 4E, a monster of Soviet engineering. In May 1970, it finally began to turn. No one realized they had just started one of the most ambitious scientific experiments in human history. At first, everything went according to plan. Year after year, the drill chewed through ancient granite. Every few hundred meters brought new rock samples, new data, new insights. Scientists celebrated every record they broke. 1 kilometer, 3 kilometers, 5 kilometers. Then something unexpected happened. The deeper the drill traveled, the harder the Earth pushed back. Equipment that had worked perfectly near the surface began failing without warning. Drill bits wore out far faster than expected. Steel pipes twisted under unimaginable pressure. Machines designed by the best Soviet engineers suddenly seemed hopelessly inadequate. But the real surprises were still waiting, because at nearly 7 kilometers below the surface, the impossible appeared. For generations, geologists believed the deep continental crust was completely dry. The immense pressure should have squeezed every microscopic crack shut. There should have been nowhere for water to exist. Yet when scientists examined the rock cores, they found water. Not tiny traces, but large amounts. This wasn't groundwater slowly leaking downward from the surface. Chemical analysis suggested something far stranger. The water had formed deep inside the rocks themselves. Under crushing pressure and extreme heat, minerals were releasing hydrogen and oxygen, creating water where science believed none could exist. Imagine discovering an oasis, not in the middle of a desert, but inside solid rock, 7 kilometers beneath your feet. Everything geologists believed about the deep crust suddenly had to be questioned. And that was only the beginning, because hidden inside those same rocks, scientists found evidence of an ancient world no one expected to survive. The drill continued downward. Every new core sample carried another surprise. Then researchers looked through powerful microscopes and froze. Tiny fossilized organisms, remarkably preserved, locked inside rocks nearly 2 billion years old. How could delicate microscopic life survive such enormous heat, such crushing pressure, for that long? The answer challenged everything scientists thought they understood about Earth's ancient history. But before we get to what those fossils really told us, there's another discovery that completely overturned geology itself, and something else the rocks were hiding that almost nobody talks about. because scattered through some of those same core samples, researchers also found something glittering: gold dust, at concentrations far higher than anyone's models had predicted. Not enough to mine, but enough to prove the deep crust wasn't just wetter and more alive than expected, it was chemically far richer too. If you're enjoying uncovering real scientific mysteries like this one, subscribe to Astroliths. Every week we explore the hidden truths of our planet, our universe, and the discoveries that continue to reshape science. Because what the drill revealed next changed geology forever. Those microscopic fossils weren't just old, they were unimaginably ancient. Scientists identified the remains of more than 20 species of microscopic marine organisms preserved inside rock estimated to be nearly 2 billion years old. At first, many researchers could hardly believe what they were seeing. These tiny organisms had once drifted through an ancient ocean at a time when complex plants, animals, and even dinosaurs were still hundreds of millions, if not billions, of years away. Over immense stretches of time, layers of sediment buried them. Continents collided. Mountains rose and eroded. The rocks were squeezed by unimaginable pressure and heated to extreme temperatures. Yet somehow those microscopic traces of life survived. The Kola borehole had become something no one expected. Not just the deepest hole ever drilled, but one of the deepest windows into Earth's distant past. And as astonishing as those fossils were, they weren't the discovery that truly shook geology, because scientists were still waiting for something they had expected to find all along. Only it never appeared. Long before the first drill ever touched the ground, geologists believed they already knew what lay deep beneath the Kola Peninsula. Earthquakes had provided the evidence. When seismic waves travel through the planet, they change speed as they pass through different materials, and for decades, scientists interpreted those changes as proof that deep beneath the granite lay another layer of rock: basalt. It was considered one of the defining features of continental crust. As the drill approached that predicted depth, excitement grew. Every meter brought them closer. Then nothing happened. No basalt, just more granite. The deeper they drilled, the more granite they found. 1 kilometer, then another, still no basalt. The boundary geologists had mapped from seismic data wasn't a change in rock type at all. Instead, it appeared to be caused by changes in the physical properties of granite under immense heat and pressure. That single discovery forced scientists to rethink decades of geological models. The Earth wasn't behaving the way they thought it should, and unfortunately, the planet had one more surprise waiting. By now, the drilling operation had become a battle against the planet itself. Temperatures climbed far beyond predictions. Scientists expected around 100 degrees Celsius. Instead, the drill encountered temperatures approaching 180 degrees Celsius, hot enough to destroy equipment that had been engineered for the mission. But heat wasn't the only problem. At those depths, the immense pressure transformed solid rock into something unexpected. It didn't behave like brittle stone anymore. It behaved almost like warm plastic. As the drill cut through the rock, the surrounding walls slowly flowed inward, squeezing the borehole shut. Equipment jammed. Drill bits failed. Steel twisted. Progress slowed to a crawl. After nearly 20 years of drilling, the Earth itself seemed determined to stop them. Then came the disaster that nearly ended everything. In 1983, thousands of meters below the surface, disaster struck. The drill string snapped. 5 kilometers of steel pipe, weighing over 100 tons, broke off inside the hole. Recovering it was impossible. Years of work vanished into the darkness. The team had 2 choices: abandon the project or begin drilling again from a shallower depth using a new branch. They chose to continue. Years later, in 1989, they finally reached their greatest achievement: 12,262 meters, more than 12 kilometers beneath the Earth's surface, a world record that still stands today. But their original goal had been 15 kilometers. They never made it. Not because they lacked determination, but because the Earth had reached the physical limits of the technology of the time. Soon afterward, funding disappeared. The Soviet Union itself was collapsing. In 1994, the project officially came to an end. The drilling rigs were dismantled, the facilities were abandoned, and a simple metal cap was welded over the deepest hole humanity has ever created. If you've heard about the Kola Superdeep Borehole before, it may not have been because of science. It may have been because of one of the internet's most famous urban legends: the well to hell. The story claimed that scientists had lowered a heat-resistant microphone into the hole and recorded the screams of people trapped in hell. The story spread around the world. Books repeated it, radio stations discussed it, millions believed it. But it wasn't true. It began with a Finnish newspaper that published the story as an April Fool's joke, and from there it spiraled, picked up internationally, and eventually amplified by American Christian broadcasters in the 1990s. The recording that circulated online was later traced to a processed mix of horror movie sound effects, not any real audio from the borehole. No microphone was ever lowered down there to record anything like that. Ironically, the real discoveries were already extraordinary. There was never any need to invent monsters beneath the earth. Reality was fascinating enough. Perhaps the most incredible part of this story isn't how deep humanity managed to drill. It's how little that distance really is. The center of the Earth lies roughly 6,371 kilometers beneath our feet. The Kola Superdeep Borehole reached just over 12 kilometers. That's less than 0.2% of the journey. If the Earth were the size of a globe in your classroom, our deepest hole would barely scratch its surface. We photographed distant galaxies, sent spacecraft beyond the solar system, landed robots on other worlds, yet the greatest unexplored frontier may still be beneath our own feet. The Kola Superdeep Borehole wasn't a journey to the center of the Earth. It was a reminder that every time science uncovers an answer, it reveals even bigger questions waiting beneath it. If you enjoy exploring the mysteries of Earth, space, and the universe through real science and cinematic storytelling, subscribe to Astroliths, because the next discovery might completely change the way you see reality.